wisdom,
prudentia,
justice,
justitia,
temperance,
temperantia,
courage.
fortitudo.
Applying ancient philosophy to modern life, this is the Sunday Stoic.
Good day, and welcome to the Sunday Stoic podcast, where we discuss the ancient philosophy of Stoicism and how it applies to modern life. Steve has kindly agreed to let me do a solo episode today. In today's episode, we will discuss the Stoic spiritual exercise of Premeditatio Malorum, which can help us in moments when we are presented with events and circumstances that we would prefer to avoid. Premeditatio Malorum is often translated to premeditation of evils, but I prefer to think of it as the premeditation of adversity, because the term evil has moral connotations, and most of what we encounter every day is not evil, but morally neutral, perhaps challenging, but not malicious or evil. To begin, it might be useful to work out a brief outline of what Premeditatio Malorum might look like. Premeditatio Malorum can be done at any time, but it is a good idea to start your day this way. This is often called the morning meditation. Think of what you intend to do that day, and all the things that sometimes frustrate your intended task for the day. Recognize that adversity might indeed present itself today. Nothing makes adversity more difficult to overcome than surprise. Next, analyze whether the things that will likely hamper you relate to your moral character. Chances are, whatever adversity presents itself relates to things that are not up to you, and therefore do not reflect on your character. Consequently, even if you do not achieve your aim, you have not been truly harmed. The only harm is moral corruption, and since the adversity does not relate to your moral character, you have suffered no true harm. What reflects on your moral character is how you react and behave in response to adversity. For example, if adversity presents itself and you give in to the passions of anger or fear and behave inappropriately, you will be participating in vice and sliding toward moral corruption. If you are able to avoid falling into a passion and respond to the adversity with appropriate action, you will be making progress toward virtue. It is important to reiterate that it will be easier to avoid passions like anger or fear if we have truly incorporated the knowledge that we have not been harmed when something goes wrong, since adversity almost always relates to externals, things that are not up to us. Changing our internal dispositions toward externals requires daily contemplation, and no amount of externals like health, wealth, or social prestige can be worth your moral character. Moral excellence is the only true good. To sum up what has been covered thus far, when adversity presents itself, remind yourself that this turn of events was possible or even anticipated. Remind yourself that the adversity relates to things that are external to us and are not up to us. And since they are not up to us, we cannot be harmed because they do not have a bearing on our moral character. This will help you to withhold assent to the impression that you are in danger of being harmed and prevent proto-passions from flowering into full-blown passions like anger or fear. Remind yourself that you didn't want to just accomplish the task you had set yourself, but you wanted to keep your judgments and actions in conformity with nature, and that is the highest priority. Finally, considering your social roles, have an idea of what appropriate action in the presence of this adversity would look like. This podcast, and Stoicism itself, is about more than maintaining inner tranquility and abstract contemplation. Stoicism is about fulfilling our social roles through appropriate action to try and make the world a better place for ourselves, our loved ones, and ultimately all of our fellow humans. It is good to start your day with Premeditatio Malorum, but it may be prudent to supplement that with periodic Premeditatio Malorums throughout the day as needed. You may have developed a wonderful plan for your day at dawn over your morning coffee and bagel. You may have developed the perfect action plan on how you will conduct yourself in the face of adversity. However, the only constant in the universe is change. Your day might not run according to the clockwork checklist which you created for yourself in the morning. When things change, and they will, new tasks and new potential adversities arise. Premeditatio Malorum may be a good thing to do to adapt to the changing circumstances. At the end of your day, During your evening meditation, review your day. It's appropriate to congratulate yourself for challenges met and overcome with appropriate actions. But it's more useful to review where you fell short. What you experience through the day can inform your future premeditatio malorums and actions. Even your failures can help you in a way. For example, if something unanticipated occurred and you fell into a passion and behaved inappropriately, it is appropriate to chide yourself and even feel shame. Turning a blind eye to your wrongdoing can harden a vice. Excusing poor behavior, especially if you allow it to happen on multiple occasions, can develop a corrupt disposition. Recognition of your failing will help you to know that you could have done better and motivate you to actually do better next time. It is not useful to ruminate too long, though. The past is fixed and unchangeable. Thinking of past shortcomings is only useful to the extent that they provide us with the knowledge of how to do better in the present moment. Premeditatio malorum isn't for everyone. If you find that you cannot think about possible future adversity without falling into circular thinking and being trapped in anxious ruminations, perhaps premeditatio malorum would not be advisable. However, please remember, you don't have to start with the big things. Contemplate minor problems first and gradually increase the difficulty of the potential adversity. Over time, it may help you to become a less anxious person, as long as you don't overdo it. Start small and work your way up. The most famous example of premeditatio malorum is, of course, Marcus Aurelius' Meditations, Book 2.1. We discussed this passage once before, but it is useful and merits repeat attention. Say this to yourself each morning. Today I shall have to deal with meddlers, with the ungrateful, with the insolent, with the crafty, with the envious and the selfish. All these vices have beset them, because they know not what is good and what is evil. But I have considered the nature of the good and found it beautiful. I have beheld the nature of the bad and found it ugly. I also understand the nature of the evildoer, and know that he is my brother, not because he shares with me the same blood or the same seed, but because he is a partaker of the same mind, and being both extracted from the divine Logos. I therefore cannot be hurt by any of them, since none of them can involve me in any baseness. I cannot be angry with my brother, or sever myself from him, for we are made by nature for mutual assistance, like the feet, the hands, the eyelids, the upper and lower rows of teeth. It is against nature for men to oppose each other, and what else is anger and aversion but opposition? Marcus Aurelius, Meditations, Book 2.1. Epictetus was a teacher, and his target audience was composed of teenagers. His example from today's reading is anticipating difficulty while at the public bath, which could be viewed as the Roman equivalent of an everyday headache, like our rush hour traffic. If you find premeditatio malorum challenging, perhaps start out with things more on the level of the example given by Epictetus. When you set about any action, remind yourself of what nature the action is. If you're going to bathe, represent to yourself the incidents that are usual in the bath. Some persons are pouring out, others are pushing in, others scolding, others stealing. And thus you will more safely go about this action if you say to yourself, I will now go to bathe and keep my own will in harmony with nature. And so with regard to every other action, for thus, if any impediment arises in bathing, you will be able to say, it was not only to bathe that I desired, but to keep my will in harmony with nature. I shall not keep it thus, if I am out of humor at things that happen. Epictetus, Enchiridion, number 4. Seneca advises to think about even the most serious adversity, but that could be viewed as being for advanced percoptantes. We should therefore reflect upon all contingencies, and should fortify our minds against the evils which may possibly come about. Exile, the torture of disease, wars, shipwreck, we must think on these. Chance may tear you from your country, or your country from you. or may banish you to the desert. This very place, where throngs are stifling, may become a desert. Let us place before our eyes in its entirety the nature of man's lot, and if we would not be overwhelmed, or even dazed by those unwanted evils, as if they were novel, let us summon to our minds beforehand not as great an evil as oftentimes happens, but the very greatest evil that could possibly happen. We must reflect upon fortune fully and completely. Seneca, Letter 91. It takes a long time and a lot of effort to change our internal dispositions in relation to externals, and only the sage would be perfect in this regard. However, we can make progress and lessen the hold that externals have on us in our value judgments. This change in disposition requires daily internal work. Premeditatio Malorum is useful for every difficult aspect of life. For many adverse conditions, we don't have a ready way to practice. While premeditation can never replace true experience in the real world, it's better than nothing. Familiarity with a situation lessens the stress associated with that situation. Consider a surgeon when they do their first surgery. Even if they are able to present a calm demeanor to the outside world, inwardly they will likely be feeling very nervous and perhaps even terrified that they might make a mistake and hurt someone. Now imagine the same surgeon 1,000 surgeries into their career. The veteran surgeon will always conduct themselves with a certain amount of caution and attention. However, the terrifying aspects will likely have subsided through exposure and repetition. Premeditatio Malorum is an artificial way to get reps in and try to mitigate fear so that we can behave appropriately in adverse conditions. The concept of Premeditatio Malorum might seem strange, pessimistic, or even morbid to some folks, but it is a good way to get exposure to situations that are not common to our everyday lives, so that we can do better when adverse conditions inevitably do present themselves. We do it mentally because it would be impractical and imprudent to purposely expose ourselves to many types of adversity. We're not going to quit our jobs, give away all our money and property, so we can have practice with poverty. We're not going to intentionally become ill or suffer injury, so we can learn how to bear up when our bodies are suffering. So, instead, we do it in our heads and gradually adjust our inner dispositions and incorporate the truth that the only harm is moral corruption, and most of the things that people find terrible are not related to our character. Things will inevitably go wrong in our lives. Over the course of our lives, we will become ill, suffer an injury, lose a job, have a loved one die, and so on. Yet we typically approach our days as if we expect everything to go smoothly, everything to go our way. When we do this, we are going out into the world without reflecting on the potential difficulties that may arise. We may be startled, disheartened, or frustrated when things don't go the way we would prefer. Anticipating adversity lessens its sting, allowing us to more readily adjust our intentions and actions to accommodate changing circumstances. This increases the chance of success in our endeavors, because one of the key things that may hamper our ability to achieve our aims is inaction or sloppy action due to clouded judgments under the pressure of adversity. Having considered potential difficulties in advance, realizing that what is presenting itself is not a true harm because it relates to something that is not up to us, will help us to keep a clearer head, and then having envisioned yourself taking appropriate action under those conditions, we are less likely to freeze up and more likely to have an idea of what to do. Even after all that, we might still fail to achieve our preferred outcomes, but at least we will have done something. When you are ready, rehearsing death is important, even though we only die once. The fact that we can only experience death once only makes it more important for us to rehearse it ahead of time. If we are to die well and conduct ourselves appropriately in the final moments of our life, we have to have an idea of what that would look like. I am fortunate in that I have had some positive role models to pull from, people I knew who conducted themselves admirably at the end of their lives. If you are not as fortunate in this regard, and you have some trouble envisioning what that might look like, it can be useful to use literature and movies for examples. Think of your favorite characters and how they conducted themselves. In relation to death, Premeditatio Malorum has some crossover with Memento Mori, but Memento Mori has many facets of its own. One area where there is crossover between the two, both Memento Mori and Premeditatio Malorum can make you more appreciative of what you have in the present. Recognition that you could lose your health, your loved ones, your wealth, and in the end, your life, will make you realize how fortunate you are to have what you do, and care more and appreciate what you have. This can make you better in fulfilling all your social roles. It can make you a better spouse, child, sibling, citizen, and better representative of your profession. Premeditatio Malorum is not an exercise in morbid or pessimistic thinking. The intended purpose is to help you keep a clear head when adversity strikes and calls you to develop strategies outlining appropriate actions so you can fulfill your social roles when things get hard. Premeditatio Malorum is useful for the development of courage because appropriate action under adverse conditions is an important aspect of courage. Having anticipated hardship and envisioning how to conduct yourself when things get hard improve the chance that you conduct yourself well when things go sideways. Thank you for listening. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, please send us an email at sundaystoic@gmail.com. If you enjoy our podcast, please subscribe and leave us a review on whatever platform you use to listen to us. Your feedback helps us to reach new audience members and build the podcast. We look forward to releasing a new episode next week, fate permitting. And as Steve always says, Carpe Diem!